start, I have a couple of like organizational announcements. As you've seen, I've been trying to kind of maintain some rooms. So after, like in the evening, there's a party, and the address for the party place is on the on the paper outside in the corridor. You will find the address, and you have received like beer coupons or beer stickers. So some of you, from what I heard, some people thought that these are just stickers. These are like beer coupons. So if you wanna like grab some free beer during the party, you have to just bring them with you. So we see each other in the evening, in the a couple hours. And also after this presentation, there are supposed to be some final words, I think in the main room. And the prizes, the awards, this kind of stuff probably either will be announced there or in a couple of days after some submissions are collected. And now let's get to the topic. I'm super happy that you're all here on my presentation. Nice to meet you all. I know it's late, so I also appreciate that you came. Today we're gonna have some fun time with platform views, but before that, some kind of, let me just tell you a bit about myself. I'm Dominic. I'm a Flutter GDE, and right now I'm freelancing, and mostly I'm working for a company called Visible, and we're building a platform for people with chronic illnesses. Perhaps many of you know somebody that have gone through COVID and have some challenges after that with dizziness and concentration. So we're trying to help people with this kind of problems. And also recently I came back to writing on my blog. So if you're into some kind of written forms about Flutter, I invite you just to follow me and see what I'm up to. By the way, this presentation also will be available as a blog post for those that prefer written text instead of slides. Also, like a side note, recently I've been a lot into DALL-E, and I know that it's not like a thing that's for everybody. Like some people have some ethical concerns about that because we're using a derivative of someone else's work and it's not necessarily attributed. But like for this presentation, just to make it a little bit funnier, I started to kind of create illustrations, and I think this works really nicely. And for instance, these are platform views, right? So if you kind of think about it for a second, right? If you're on a platform and there are views. And of course, we're going to talk about like not these platform views, but platform views in the sense of Flutter. And probably some of you used platform views, even though you haven't been aware of that. So for instance, if you use Google Ads or maybe use Video Player or Camera, these kind of use cases, these kind of features require to handle platform views or some form of transferring the native view into Flutter. It doesn't necessarily have to be a platform view. And recently, I had to work with a couple of them, and actually that's my, I would say, attitude to learn about the topic. So like before this presentation, I didn't know anything about platform views. So I hope that I can just share some of my findings with you and how it's done, what are some kind of challenges, and what are some kind of new discoveries that we can do with platform views in the future. So to make it a bit more entertaining, I had set up a goal for myself. And the story behind is that even like 3 years ago, I tried to build a camera plugin that's better than the official one. And this is a bird with a Viking hat. Yeah. So I wanted to build this camera thing for Flutter for a long time. I tried different options because I don't know if you use the official camera plugin. It's an amazing piece of software, but at the same time, there is a lot of legacy code. So even like 3 years ago, when like Flutter was just like kind of still very early age, the camera plugin was very simple. We tried a couple of different options. And for instance, if you just go through like a history of different approaches, these are the ones that I, for instance, care about. So of course, there is just official camera plugin, which is nice. It went through a refactor in 2021. So it's really like up to the current standards. It supports web. And like, for instance, at the VGV, when I worked at the VGV, my dear friend worked also on the web implementation for the camera plugin. So there's a lot of things about camera that were done over like the last 3 years. There is, for instance, Camera Awesome. This is a take from Appearance company, and they have built their own camera implementation, and they maintain it. And it's like an alternative approach if you want to use camera. We have a bit more features. However, there are still packages like this one, Camera Fix Exception, where people were tired of the camera plugin and they just created like a fork of the camera with just a simple change in the code base. Or other people, like, for instance, together with my friend Razvan, 2 years ago, we tried to port React Native Camera to Flutter. And we succeeded. We had been like able to run the Android version of that in Flutter, like the React Native port. And it was fun stuff, but at the same time, it was like not perfect. So what we came up was that we wanted to build, like myself, I just tried to see for myself if I am able to build the camera plugin just with platform views. So platform views are a great tool. However, many people have some concerns with using camera. However, let's not talk like stories. Let's just dive into how platform views actually work. So we will just go through iOS and Android for now. We're going to go deeper later on. So let's just start with iOS. So if you want to have a platform view, at the beginning, the flow can be a bit intimidating. There's a lot of moving pieces. So just to make it a bit more understandable, if you just have like your Flutter widget, right? Something that you want to display in your app. This Flutter widget will have to display a UI kit view. This is another widget from the Flutter that just lets us access the native view somehow. Where do we get this native view from? So if you were ever to build a plugin, you know that there's something called Flutter plugin register. This is just a class that keeps references to things called factories. And this factories, in this case, this platform view factory. These are the classes that just know how to render a given view. Simple logic so far. So if the factory knows how to render a view, it can render a thing that implements Flutter platform view. That's just another class, in this case, Objective-C or Swift class. And this class is meant to just return UI view. UI view is like a view class for iOS. And that's like pretty simple flow. Couple of classes that you need to implement for yourself, and you should see a UI view on the screen. On Android, the flow is almost exactly the same. We also have the registry. We also have the factory. We have the Android view widget. However, there is one slight change, because on Android, there is also another option how to render a platform view. And this is like when you want to go a bit lower level in your implementation. You don't want to just use the Android view like a wrapper, abstract class, but something that when you want to just maybe optimize something or choose a different option for that. So on Android, we have two major ways how you can show a native view. First one is called virtual display, and this is like the simple one. This is the one that you get when you use just Android view. And the other one is hybrid composition. This is like fancy name, hybrid composition. It sounds fancy, and it means that it allows us to have the view to be recognizable by the native platform, by the Android. So it's put inside of the view structure view hierarchy. And this was 2020. And this year, there's a new fancy refactor going on. And if you used Flutter 3.0 with platform views on Android, you may have encountered some of the issues with that. So this is a huge refactor that aims to improve the performance and kind of replace the old school virtual display on newer platforms. And this also aims to like make our lives a bit more predictable. But it added a lot of problems and challenges. So for instance, our application had to retain on the Flutter 2.10 for a while until some errors were fixed on the Flutter beta. So this was a potentially problematic. I hope that in the future it will change. By the way, there's like a distinct logic which way you have to go. And on my blog, you will find like a table that will tell you which variant of the mode you have to use when in order to show a given mode. But just to give you a clue, for instance, if you want your view to be accessible, for instance, this is Android Inspector, View Inspector, or Layout Inspector. Yeah. And this shows us, like, this is virtual display, so it's invisible to Android. So Android doesn't know that the view is there. Whereas if you use hybrid composition, then it's a bit more, I would say, approachable for the system. System is able to figure out the accessibility features, and like the position in the activity, the structure in the activity is all there. Just a note, on iOS, there's only one mode, hybrid composition. And if you try to inspect your Flutter application in Xcode, you also see the native views in the layout hierarchy. This is kind of cool, and this actually shows you like how the even how the native view is bounded by some kind of constraints that you pose from outside. Let's come back to our goal. So now we know how to kind of, what's the flow. We're going to go a bit deeper into the code in a second, but let's think about our goal. So just to make it simpler, I decided that I'm not going to write my camera implementation from scratch, because I know that like it's very difficult work. I tried this several times already in the last 2-3 years, and I just decided to gonna use something that already works. Many people have done a lot of camera libraries. They work just fine. They have solved 1,000 issues with different makes and phones, and we're just gonna try to use that. The goal for today is just to capture the photo. That's all what we want to have, and we don't want to record anything. And the other point that I wanted to make is to build this as a plugin. So for instance, if you go through any of the examples for native views, a lot of them is just like how to render this inside of your app, but without consideration for the structure of the app. So I wanted to make it as a plugin. And by the way, tomorrow there is a great talk coming from Gam about federated plugins. So if you are into this kind of topics, definitely check it out in the morning. And also the sample that you will see in this app follows this kind of structure. It uses federated plugin template as well, so kind of cool. Let's dive into the code. At the beginning, there's a lot of boilerplate, couple of lines, but the only part that we actually care about is this one, where we just define the type of our view. The type of our view will be referenced on the other side, I mean on the native side. And there's a couple of other pieces here, like for instance, gesture recognizers. And we just had, Gam is not here, but like we just had an amazing talk about gestures. So if you want to, for instance, handle gestures on the native side somehow differently than just the default implementation, then you can, of course, provide your own gestures. Then we move on to the Swift side. On the Swift side, as you remember, we have the plugin registry. So we just need to register our factory, and we have to provide the ID that we used just a second ago. Very simple stuff. Then when we have our factory, the factory needs to return the view. In this case, this is named native view, and we just pass some parameters, nothing fancy. Then this is the view implementation, Flutter platform view implementation. Here, what we have, and I just wanted to spice it up a little bit, because, again, samples out there just use UI view implementation. What I wanted to try out is if I'm able to embed Swift UI view inside of the Flutter. So if you don't know, Swift UI is like the declarative approach to UIs in iOS. It's very similar to Flutter. So I thought it would be kind of cool just to explore if it's possible. And it is, like, very simple, one-liner that allows us to embed any Swift UI view inside of the UI view. And this is like what actually made this thing really nice and easy to work with, because Swift UI is almost like just using Flutter, but with Swift. And there's a bit of differences that, frankly, I enjoy. And we can talk about this after the presentation, like what things from Swift UI I think would be nice to have in Flutter. But here, you just need something that's called UI hosting controller, just a class that is available for iOS that wraps any Swift UI view. And we just return view in our view function, and that's practically all. Of course, there needs to be some constraints, but like that's just a maintenance. And our view, and if you even don't know Swift, you can kind of guess what's here, right? This is a V stack, probably some kind of vertical stack that has two texts and some kind of style. And actually, I enjoy this kind of style. There are ways to do it in Flutter this way, but it's still a bit more verbose. And here, just know that this is a headline and a body, and that's all, right? And this is what we see. I added some like sparkles here. And this is also cool. If you go into the source code, you will find how it's done. But like this is just a Swift UI inside of the Flutter, and that was like a breakthrough for me because I just like didn't know if it's possible at all. So it was kind of cool to see that you can actually use Swift UI from Flutter, and that's so simple. Let's move on to the Android side. And here, the pattern is repeated. We have our Android view with type. Then there is this is a version of the same code, but with hybrid composition. So as you remember, this was the virtual display, right? We just have Android view, and this is the hybrid composition. A bit more boilerplate, a bit more code to write to make it happen. Not like substantially more. It's mostly like parentheses and some kind of noise, syntax noise. But the important part is here that in the Surface factory, we have to return something that's called Android view surface. But the important difference is that there's like this call, init expensive Android view. And the name says it all, right? Init expensive Android view. It's not something that's potentially cheap. And that was actually what was pushing me out off from that, because if it's expensive, then probably it's not going to work for like a real-time camera view thing. But we'll see in a second how it works. And if you would replace the init expensive Android view, you could with init Android view, you would actually get the same code as before the Android view. So Android view is just a wrapper for the init Android view call. And if you use the previous stable 3.0 or the current stable 3.3, there are still like some differences in how it's handled, because on Android 12 or 11, like the hybrid, like the texture layer hybrid composition can be used, but on Android 8, some kind of different option is selected. So there is a bit of logic behind this and some kind of fallbacks, and there is a refactor going on to make it a bit more maintainable, because this is a lot of legacy code spanning from like 2018. But like the team is doing a great job. During when I was creating this presentation, I found like 3 bugs, and they were all super responsive in handling that on the Flutter issue tracker. So definitely, if you do some kind of research, make sure to report that to Flutter team. There's like amazing team of people that actually triage issues, and you get a response like within 24 hours. And in the Android code, because this is in Kotlin, we have very similar situation as in case of the iOS. We have our platform view registry, and we just register our view factory. So the slight difference here is that on iOS, you have single registry. On Android, you have 2 registries. The first one is just the Flutter plugin registry, and the other is a platform view registry. But that's just a syntax difference. We have our factory. Our factory is going to return our native view. Again, passing some parameters, nothing that's scary. And here's the Android code for the native camera view, or for now it's just a view. And here we just have a text view. And this view that you see here, pointing by this little Android, is can be any Android view that can be shown as a surface. Yeah. So this was all like tutorial-like, and if you go through the documentation, you can figure this out. But like, how do we do like the juicy stuff? How do we show the camera actually? So this is also pretty interesting, and I would say really easy, as I was surprised to discover. So we will embed a full camera app. So we can show any Swift UI on iOS. So we just put a existing camera app in Swift UI and just try to expose some of the things that they do. And we'll just expose a one capture method for the via the method channel in our plugin. And what I found, there's an amazing sample in Swift UI from a super cool website, right, Wenderlink. This is article by Jono Mittelfeld, and they have written an amazing tutorial that I followed to re-implement the Swift UI camera app. And this is another, I would say, side story. I don't know if you ever had to modify or create iOS plugin. And this is always super, I would say, silly experience, because you can see on the left side, in order to modify the Swift code for a plugin, you actually have to go through the example app for this plugin. And then from within this example app, you kind of have to go through this like ladder of folders to access your files. I find it hilarious. And so, for instance, our content view is just here. And yeah, this is what I meant. Like, there's like this ladder of files. And once we have our content view, this is, again, Swift UI, all understandable to us. Z-stack, probably some kind of stack that we have in Flutter, and a couple of views, frame view, which will render our camera preview, error view if anything happens, control view that will show a couple of buttons in the, and there's also our view model, and view model is like just a state management for our camera. Very simple code, understandable, and like I really enjoy this because this just shows that the declarative frameworks are probably the future of UI design. And here's what we see, right? The same view. It's just me hanging around with my camera for the first time, super happy about it. Probably late in the night. I don't know what hour was that, but like it was super cool experience just to see the camera running like that. And what is cool about this, and this is just a GIF, but it's like ultra smooth. So this is, again, like a comparison point to the official camera. That's actually, I think it's capped at some frame rate. You can, of course, try to fork it and modify. But what you have here is like whatever the platform gives you, it renders at the same frame rate. So if you have like a brand new iPhone that has like a ultra fluid screen or whatever, you have like a really nice smooth motion. So this is super cool because like we tried the same approach for one of our clients, and we were very hesitant. But once we moved, because we needed like 120 FPS recording for the client, and the official camera doesn't support that, so we just went the native route. And when we discovered that this is so smooth, that was super cool. And I just re-implemented similar thing, but this time with SwiftUI, and like again, almost no overhead. We'll come to a bit more performance considerations in a second, but like if you just display this camera view, it's super smooth. And the code for that is super simple, right? I just added to my SwiftUI the camera view, and that's all, right? No like nasty like UI view code whatsoever. How to do it on camera, on Android, right? So we again have our cute Android robot, this time with a camera. And how to do it with this kind of setup. So we will use another library. This is a pretty cool project maintained for many years. And what is important about this is that, as I said before, they have already solved 1,000 issues with their library. They work with Xiaomi phones, with Samsung phones, with some kind of different makes that we haven't even heard of. And they solved that. And it works just fine for like API 15. You could, of course, use Camera X. The Camera X is the new Android API for camera that aims to solve some of the issues that we encounter normally. That's my goal for the next couple of weeks, just to try to use Camera X, because the camera plugin uses API called Camera 2, which is a bit more outdated. There's a lot of manual handling. And we just create a control to manage the camera view the same way as on iOS. We'll have a method channel to handle that. We'll expose the take picture, the same way through the method channel. So when it comes to the Kotlin code, we just, instead of returning the text view, we just return the camera view, simple thing. And we just put some layout parameters just to make sure that it's positioned correctly. And what's super cool about this library, it's a bit like declarative, maybe not exactly declarative, but you could put these parameters also in the camera view XML. But like you can enable gestures, you can enable the which way the camera is facing, whether it should support some resolutions, and so on and so forth. And this is me, right, using this on Android. The same code, just different platform view. And I added some layout in the meantime. I didn't like the wide screen, so I went for the old school iPhone 3G style. I liked it very much, and it was super fun to create. And as you can see, super fluid. What a platform gives you, it just renders that at the same frame rate. So once I had this, another question popped in my head. Can we expand it to desktop, right, to macOS? This is like something that was also a big issue, a big challenge for many years now in Flutter. That on macOS you can of course build amazing tools like rows or like Superlist, right? That just do some kind of painting of pixels, but it's difficult to show something natively like a web view or camera. And with Flutter 3.0, or like more like with current version of a current master version of Flutter, it's like possible to show platform views finally. And guess what? Like the same code that worked on iOS works on macOS. It's like you can just copy and paste and just change some variables to refer to macOS instead of iOS, and it just works. That's like super cool. And actually today, just before this talk, we tried out like the sample that I use has some kind of effects, but you can kind of just run the same code, the same UI, the same camera preview in SwiftUI, because SwiftUI is also cross-platform. So you can show the exact same layout, and it works just fine. What is nice about macOS and iOS is that you don't have to worry about lifecycle. Like you don't have to, on Android, you have to take care of like activity on pause, activity on resume. A bit of management here is needed, but on macOS and iOS, like it's platform that handles that, and like permission stuff, right? So it's all handled by the platform. Once you try to access some API related to camera, it is gonna ask you. Whereas on Android, you have to kind of first ask for the permission, and then only you can use the given API. Whereas on iOS, it's a bit more declarative. What you can see here is kind of interesting, is that, and I don't know like if it's visible, but the debug flag is not visible, right, all the time, because the platform views on macOS, unfortunately, are shown on top of everything still. It's not like they can be interlaced between layers of widgets. And this is an issue with Flutter Compositor. Flutter Compositor is a class that, like, after like things are rendered, it just tries to kind of put things in a proper like Z index. Like this compositor is still not, I would say, implemented for macOS. And there is a bit of like APIs that don't support on macOS. So for instance, there is no gesture support yet. Yeah, so like they are not fully supported at the moment. No gestures. So if you try to click, you will get exceptions. You cannot resize the window. That's a, I would say, bad position to be in, but like you cannot resize the window at the moment when you show platform view. That's important to note. And it can only be shown above the widgets. There's also a couple of other, but performance is smooth. It's nice. It works just fine. And also, as the macOS is still not stable, it requires a different API. So you cannot just like have the same library. You have to implement like copy paste the code that is necessary to show on macOS, which is not a problem, but it's worth mentioning that it's not like one-to-one. Yeah, but the setup is almost exactly as on iOS. The work is in progress. There's still a lot of things that Flutter team needs to tackle, but like Q3 2022 is the goal for the macOS platform views. So the web view support, camera maybe, Google Ads, this kind of stuff. Hopefully we'll have them this year. Again, like just to touch on the fact that we're discussing desktop support for a mobile framework. And if you even look at the lineup of the conference, there's not many conferences where you have both desktop talks, web talks, mobile talks, UI talks, project management talks, and this kind of stuff where like this combines all of that. And I think this is really like showing the powers of the toolkit that we use. I'm of course a fanboy, but at the same time, once I had to use SwiftUI, and I also tried Jetpack Compose, but Jetpack Compose was not like cooperating with me like SwiftUI did. But like the next goal is just to try Jetpack Compose within Flutter, and I think that could be kind of cool idea. There's a lot of traction for this in the community. So like even the fact that we can expect this is kind of cool, because like I'm gonna go back into this in a second, but like even like 3 years ago, nobody even thought about this. And I just wanted to mention something about the performance and platform view scrolling. And this is especially to Henan, who had a really nice presentation about scrolling that I couldn't watch, but I'm gonna watch it again. I don't know if you enjoyed this kind of. Yeah, I just wanted to point out. Yeah, so what when it comes to scrolling, and this is important for platform views, right? Because often you will get like platform views as a video, right? Just to in a wall of videos, or Google Ads work this way, right? You need to have them, and it works like 9 out of 10 times fine. It's not perfect. There's some glitches all the time. Like if you would scroll very fast, it will glitch a little bit. And also here we just have a text. If you put a bit more complex view, like for instance, if you have a like my camera view, you will get like a junky scrolling. And this is, for instance, an example where I try to put multiple cameras, camera previews. And of course, there is some kind of overhead from the native side, like displaying a couple of native views, even like in Swift would be difficult. But this kind of list view is just unusable. It doesn't even scroll, right? If you try to scroll it, it just stops, like it's junky, and it's just 4 views, right? Of course, a couple of more before and after, as this is a list view, but it's still not usable. So, for instance, I know that my implementation of camera is not going to work in a scrolling environment well. Yeah, some of the common issues, right? So I just started going through them, and there was like a pile of them. And like if you just try to look for some solution, it's still work in progress. But like as I mentioned like a second ago, just 3 years ago, 2.5, was just starting. I had a talk at Flutter Europe, another amazing conference where we discussed all the desktop-related challenges and hopes. And platform views was one of the issues that I mentioned. And finally, after almost 3 years, it's going to happen. macOS gets platform view support, hopefully Windows in a couple of months. And like, so if you're into this kind of topic, maybe that's time to try it out. Because I talked before with Philip project, like there's still a lot of hesitation when it comes to native. Like when a client comes to you and they ask you, oh, I need to like build like a TikTok clone or whatever. Yeah, that's a common topic, I must say. And then like you are hesitating, but the camera support, the video support, it's not there. Like it's gonna be flaky. That was what I was saying like 3 months ago, 6 months ago. We had clients approaching us about camera stuff. And that was really difficult, like to say, unfortunately, the thing that I use doesn't support this well, and you have to just find some other solution. But what I found out is actually, and this sounds like a hyper optimistic, probably what I say, but you can just get this one level below Flutter into the native realm and just try to implement something that doesn't work for you natively. And this is kind of cool that the performance drop is almost invisible in most of the cases. Of course, as always, you can shoot yourself in the foot really easily, but it still works just fine in some kind of a POC scenario, so it should work in production as well. And yeah, like this is the thing that we have right now, right? So this is you can get this app if you want. It works just fine on iOS, on Android, macOS, and iOS. And like this is personally, like as you know, like I was thinking about having like a camera working like everywhere with like 120 FPS support, and it finally happened. So personally, I was super excited. Like, and again, as many of like speakers I prepared like for the just before, but like on Sunday when I was able to run all of that at the same time simultaneously, and like this was super cool moment for me. And I hope that you can just try it out for yourself from the repo. There's like a special website. You can go there. There's a couple of links in there, the slides, and there will be a blog post that will just outline some of the major things from that. And you can just try it out for yourself on your own device. There may be some challenges with permissions and so on, but I hope that you as mobile developers will just figure this out. And let me know, like if you, for instance, figure out like that this doesn't work on some makes or some phones, that could be a cool project just to maybe try harder to make it work everywhere. And for now, I'm super happy with what we have here. I have some more plans about it. I'm not sure if I'm gonna kind of maintain that, but it's cool to see that it's possible, and maybe even just submit some kind of feature request to the Flutter team. Hey, maybe you could just ditch the old implementation and start fresh. Not possible probably, but that could be a cool idea. That's all for now. Thank you very much. This is a dog with a Viking hat from DALL-E. I hope that you enjoyed. Thank you very much. Feel free to ask any questions if you have them. I enjoyed the time today very much, and thank you very much for attention.